Hello, everyone. What's going on? This is the Noah Gillian Show, and I, of course, am your host, Noah Gillian. Thanks so much for joining us today. It is the 27th of September, 2022, and we are here today on today's episode to break down some major storylines and questions from the NFL in week 3. And we're also going to talk some Major League Baseball, and as the playoff race is heating up, got about 8 or 9 games left for everybody on their schedule till we get to 162. So we're going to do a little bit of a dive into that. But before we get started, please hit that subscribe button if you're on YouTube. Hit that alarm bell so you get notified right when our videos go live. If you want to find us on Instagram, you can find the show at The Noah Gillian Show, and you can find myself at Noah Gill1. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can find the show at Noah Gillian Show, and you can find myself at Noah Gillian. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, to start off the show today, we're going to switch up a little bit of our NFL breakdowns than how we've been doing it to start the season. I wanted to shift more into a general storyline and questions type of format instead of just breaking down game by game. I think that'll be a little bit easier to engage with you guys as you're consuming the pod, and could lead to a little bit more back and forth between myself and the fans on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, any of the comment sections. So quick note, feel free to shoot us any questions you have, anything you got on your mind, anything you want to hear us talk about on the show. Always willing to do that. We got a mailbag question today, so we're going to get into that in a little bit. But to start off, I wanted to start off with our first big storyline of the week, and that revolves around the Philadelphia Eagles. And that question is, are the Eagles the best team in the NFL? Now they've been playing very close to that ceiling. If we look at a lot of the metrics that involve just performance in general, the Eagles are 5th in the NFL in terms of teams points per game. They're 2nd in the league in terms of yards per play. In terms of third down conversions per game, they're tied for 2nd. And then even in a stat and turnover margin, they're tied for 3rd. So you see kind of a number of different statistics that really show the viability across the board for the teams in terms of total points, yards per play, how much yards you're gaining every single play. You're talking about they're gaining 6.4 yards per play, which is an outstanding number. And then you're also talking about being clutch, converting a great amount of third downs per game. And then in terms of turnover margin, that's what ultimately swings a number of these close games. They had a dominant performance over the Washington Commanders on Sunday. A lot of people expected the Eagles to have a big showing based off their first 2 weeks. Myself being a Philadelphia fan, I didn't want to jump the gun too much. We've gotten to this cycle multiple times where they look good in the beginning of the season. In September, you jump on the Super Bowl train, and it ultimately leads to a crash. But overall, I'm liking everything I'm seeing out of this team. One of the things that I was worried about, with the team playing so well, one of the holes that I was seeing was the pressure from the defensive line. And in this game, they absolutely dominated. They sacked Carson Wentz 9 times on Sunday. 7 of those 9 sacks came against a 4-man front. And if you listen to our episode last week, that was one of the main concerns I had. Getting pressure with just 4 rushers. Not having to blitz and leaving yourself susceptible in the secondary. I was really nervous that they weren't really getting much push. And what do you know? Brandon Graham comes out hot, 2.5 sacks. Fletcher Cox involved in the sacks. Hassan Reddick finally involved with a sack and a half. Javon Hargrave finally involved with a sack and a half. The whole team really got after it. Maybe it was because they were playing Carson Wentz. Maybe it was because of the secondary on the back end really playing great coverage, and they were able to get to the quarterback, making Carson Wentz hold it an extra second, which allowed the defensive line to get there. I think it was a combination of all those factors, and they look dominating. If they can continue to kind of keep that up, keep the pressure up, keep the coverage up in the back end. I mean, we're already seeing how explosive this offense can be with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, who are threatening to, be if not the best wide receiver duo in the league. We talked about this last week with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They are certainly in the conversation with those two, especially with the play they've had this year. And Jalen Hurts, I mean, what else can you say? This guy has turned himself into a bona fide MVP candidate. I mean, he just absolutely is dominating. And he didn't even have to use his legs this week against the Commanders. Only 20-something yards rushing, but he threw over 300 yards, had multiple touchdowns through the air, just absolutely was picking apart this Washington defense from the pocket. And the offensive line showed out. I mean, you talk about it. Quarterback playing phenomenal. Offensive line playing phenomenal. Weapons playing phenomenal. Defense playing phenomenal. Head coach, play caller calling great games, especially to start the game. Like that's when you can really see the preparation of the week. That's when you can really see. We talk about this with the Cardinals sometimes. It's like they sometimes don't look great to start the game, and then towards the second half of the game is when they really start picking it up. With the Eagles, it's almost the inverse. Early in the game, they play really, really well on script. This is something Kansas City always does. When they play on script, they're so good, and that just all is preparation from the week. That's all scouting. How can we be effective early in the game, and how can we build a lead? And they look great. Now, the second half, there's still some worries. We're going to touch on that with our mailbag question a little bit later. But overall, I mean, I read a number of power ranks today. A lot of places have the Eagles top 2. Couple places had them 1. Couple places had them 3. But they're pretty much in that upper echelon right now. They have pretty much a good schedule coming up. Jacksonville, I'm a little bit worried about this matchup coming up. We'll talk about them in a few minutes. Cardinals after that, Dallas after that. So not any superstar teams really. No Buffaloes, no Kansas Cities. Nothing like that. No Tampa Bays, no Green Bays. No, we already played Minnesota, obviously, so we have that in the rear view. So it's going to be interesting to see. But overall, I think the Eagles are making a very, very strong case to be considered the best team in the NFL. So from one undefeated team in Philadelphia to the only other undefeated team remaining in the NFL, we have the Miami Dolphins. And the question here today, is Miami the team to beat in the AFC East? They came out they came out on Sunday and beat the Buffalo Bills in a AFC divisional battle. Many people expect Buffalo to be the best team in the league. They've just looked like a wagon off the rails, just taking out everybody in their path to start the year. And Miami, give them credit, at home, they ended up getting the W. Now, to answer the question, no, I don't think they're the team to beat. Regardless of the W, Miami only ran like 39 plays in this game. Buffalo ran about 90 plays, which is absolutely ridiculous when you think about it. And I think at the end of the day, the heat got to Buffalo more than anything. You saw Stephon Diggs consistently in and out of the game with cramps. Josh Allen with his arm ended up, throwing a couple balls into the dirt, sailing a couple throws. And without the presence of a run game for Buffalo, Josh Allen just has to do everything. And when you're in that heat, when you're running 90 plays, when you have to throw it 65, 68 times, it's going to wear on you. And I know it's only week 3 and he's a big, strong guy, but that still wears on you as a quarterback. So I just think that now when we're looking at this, we really just need to take a step back with Miami, understand that they're good, understand that they're a legit threat in the AFC, but I don't really think they're a team to beat yet in the AFC. They got Cincinnati coming up on Thursday night this week. I am going to take Cincinnati in that game, I believe. Cincinnati should be the underdog, or I'll have to check that line. You know what? Let me get that. Let me get that line right now while we're talking about it. But you talk about it, Miami just playing. So we got the Dolphins at plus 158, Bengals at minus 190 on the money line. So Miami's an underdog. Vegas is kind of seeing this as well going into the game. They're kind of seeing the Bengals as in a good spot. Bengals opening as 1.5 favorites, 1.5 point favorites in this game. So I could see the Bengals really taking a step forward and winning this game. But I think when we bring it back to the Dolphins and kind of have that conversation, I think that all the stats in that game, when you look at the team stats versus Buffalo versus Miami, I mean, Buffalo outgained them a tremendous amount. They ran a ton more plays. They had a ton more first downs. And yet they lost because of the inability to run the ball, to eat clock, and to convert when they got down in the red zone. They had an interception Josh Allen had. So are they the team to beat in the AFC East? No, I still am going to give it to Buffalo, but there are concerning signs for Buffalo, mainly being the lack of a run game and the fact that in close games, they've really struggled all the way back to the playoffs and starting this year. Early in the game against the Rams, they were kind of teetering a little bit, and then they ended up pulling away. They're the ultimate prize fighter with that knockout punch, so I still think they are the team to beat in the AFC East. All right, next topic coming on here. Next storyline, next question we're going to be talking about, are the Jaguars the team to beat in the AFC South? Now, if you guys have been listening to us the last couple weeks, even all the way down to the breakdown, the mega preview we talked about before the season started, we've been on the Jaguars. We thought bringing in Doug Peterson, it was really going to unlock Trevor Lawrence. They went out and they got Christian Kirk in free agency, Evan Ingram at the tight end position. They went and got Zay Jones. None of these names are big names necessarily, but they are all athletic freaks, and they all have specific skill sets that fit well in the Doug Peterson offense. You talk about James Robinson coming off the Achilles injury. What was he going to do? He has looked absolutely phenomenal, scoring in every single game. He had over 100 yards against the Chargers. And then ETN has been the perfect change of pace back for Jacksonville. But this all comes down to Trevor Lawrence. He's the best quarterback in the division, in my opinion, easily. And they have an offensive play calling head coach who, was Frank Reich's mentor when they were in Philadelphia. So there's already kind of that connection right there, that familiarity between the two teams. And it comes down to the explosion. I don't really think Indianapolis has that type of explosion on the outside to keep up in a potential shootout. Now, granted, congratulations to Indianapolis. They had a big win over Kansas City this week at home. I think it was more of a situation where Kansas City lost that game than Indianapolis won that game. You talk about Kansas City went for a fake field goal, missed that play. They missed a field goal. They had a play where Travis Kelce should have had a touchdown. They just seemed like it was a special teams mishap, and then they had a couple, and granted, Indianapolis capitalized on the mistakes. Kansas City also had a muffed punt, which set Indianapolis up at the 5-yard line. So you got to give Indianapolis credit for getting that win, but I think the Jacksonville win in Los Angeles over the Chargers was much more impressive. Now, granted, the Chargers had injuries. Justin Herbert wasn't 100%. They lost Rashawn Slater, their star left tackle. Joey Bosa left the game. They were without J.C. Jackson. So there was a lot of injuries for Los Angeles there. But on the road against a team that was favored in that game. They went on the road as an underdog. Trevor Lawrence looked phenomenal, over 250 yards passing, 2 touchdowns through the air. Looked very good in the pocket, looked comfortable. Each week you can see the progression too. I'm buying stock on the Jaguars. I'm coming onto this show almost saying I still think the Colts are the team to beat in the division. I still think they're going to win the division, but now I'm sitting here and I think that the Jaguars have a legit chance. They already beat the Colts already this year. The Colts have dropped a half game to the Texans when they tied them. So I really think if you're looking at, the futures market, I think there's a buying opportunity here to maybe take the Jaguars to win the AFC South, mainly because of how good their offense has been. And then let's also talk about it here, the defense. I'll bring some stats up here. Turnover margin per game. Jaguars number 1 in the league at plus 2.3. So they are taking the ball away. They're not turning the ball over. You're talking about third down conversions. This is what we talk about with Philadelphia. Jacksonville tied for 6th in the NFL in third down conversions per game. It means when they're getting in these third downs, they have great play calling to scheme open looks for Trevor Lawrence, and then he does the rest, converting the ball. And then, there's still room to work with points per game. They're not. They are right there. They are number 7 in the league in points per game, averaging 28 points per game, ahead of Miami, ahead of teams like Las Vegas, Cincinnati, Arizona, the Rams, the Chargers, ahead of all teams like this, just behind Cleveland and Philadelphia, less than a point behind those teams. So they are right there in terms of team yards per play. This was the one that they were a little bit lower. At 12th, still in the upper half, but they are at 5.5. So only, less than half a yard a play behind, a top 10 team. So I'm buying stock. If you can't tell how excited I'm talking about the Jaguars, I think they are legit. Their defense is phenomenal. They took Trayvon Walker out of Georgia, number 1, and he has been a beast. They got Josh Allen on the other side. Not that Josh Allen, the defensive end Josh Allen. And that has just opened up everything. And they're just playing so opportunistic. They're playing aggressive on the defensive line. And, when you have that confidence, when you start to see the results, I think their confidence is just going to skyrocket, especially for a young team. So, yeah, they are the team to beat in the AFC South. All right, the next question that we came up with here is, did we overrate the AFC West coming into the year? Now, this division on paper coming into the year, you had Denver going out and acquiring Russell Wilson. You had the Chargers with Justin Herbert coming into their own. They picked up Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson, really going for it. You still had Kansas City doing their thing. And then you had Las Vegas going out and getting Devontae Adams. They got Chandler Jones on the defensive side of the ball. So you really saw this was going to be a bloodbath of a division. And what has it been? It's been underwhelming. So yes, I think we did overrate them. We talk about points per game here, a statistic we've referenced on the pod so far. Denver, 31st in the league in total points per game. Las Vegas, 10th in points per game. Kansas City, 4th in points per game. And the Chargers are at 16th. But we expected all these teams to be upper half. So while Kansas City has done well, they've looked like the team to beat in this division. Some teams have underwhelmed. Denver, I missed on Denver. I'll accept that right now. I do think they're going to get a lot better as the season goes on, so I don't want to back off my pick yet. I did pick them to win the Super Bowl. For those of you that don't remember that in the preview pod, I did pick them to win the Super Bowl. I'm not backing off the pick yet, but I am a little bit nervous. They should really be 3-0. That's the real thing. I think they should really be 3-0. So they're winning while working through their problems, which is the sign of a good team. They have a phenomenal defense. Like, their defense is absolutely great. They're top 10 in terms of turnover margin per game. They have a positive turnover margin per game. They're doing things very, very well on the defensive side of the ball. I just think Russell Wilson needs to take over. Did we overrate Russell Wilson? Maybe. The ability to scramble and make plays off script is one of his favorite things to do, or it's one of his best things to do, and that's been one of the things he has failed to do so far this year. We saw it on Sunday night against the 49ers. The best drive, the only touchdown drive, what did he do? Scrambled to the left, off script, made a play. What was the next play? Back shoulder the next play, scrambled for a first down, kept the drive alive. So I think Russell Wilson needs to continue to do that, and they need to bring that team up. Now, I don't think we necessarily overrated them to a certain point because the Chargers have dealt with a ton of injuries. So I think that's kind of holding them back slightly. But they also haven't been fantastic to start the year. They've also been struggling to do regular things throughout the year. But Kansas City looks phenomenal. The Raiders are 0-3, and yet they're top 10 in points per game in the league. They're right up there. They're top 10 in points in the league. They're top 10 in yards per play. So I think they're going to turn it around. The one thing that they do struggle with is on third down. They're 21st in the league in third down conversions per game. And then when we look at their turnover margin, they're 26th in the league. So they have a negative turnover margin. So situationally, they haven't been very good, which I think leads to the record of 0-3. But their offense is generally producing points, producing yards, but it's just situationally they need to improve on. So I think we kind of pegged it generally right. Denver I've been whiffed on so far in terms of general output, but they are 2-1. They are right there, so I think we need to exercise a little bit of patience. I think it's too early to say if we overrated them. I think in terms of them versus the rest of the league, we probably overrated them a little bit. But overall, I think it's a firm no for that question. All right, to wrap up our NFL talk today, we had a mailbag question submitted from a listener this week. Paul from Millville submitted this question for us. Are we worried about the Eagles' lack of scoring in the second half? So 2 straight weeks and 2 straight second halves where the Eagles failed to score a single point. And am I worried about it? No. Flat out answer, no. We look at it, and let's just talk about it real quick. The Eagles in the first half, they're averaging 24 points per game. That is first in the NFL. We look at the second half, they're averaging 4.7 points per game, which is 27th in the NFL. Now, you may be saying, that's a stat that almost proves your point contrary. Now, what I mean by that is they're first in the NFL in first half points per game. When you can build leads like that, we're nitpicking here. When you look as good as they have looked this year, you can nitpick. The Eagles have won the turnover battle every single week this year. Obviously, they're dominating in the first half of games. Their rushing offense is still very, very good. Jalen Hurts looks so comfortable. I just think it's a little bit of taking your foot off the gas a little bit here. And Nick Sirianni admitted so after the Minnesota game. He said that he felt like he got a little bit complacent. They took their foot off the pedal. And then in this game, the defense was just so dominant that you didn't have to go all out. In the first half, they were taking deep shots down the field. And in the second half, they didn't really try to do that too much. They tried to run the ball, eat the clock. They did take some shots, and they were unsuccessful. But you saw when the game was close, Jalen Hurts was pushing the ball down the field. He was giving his receivers a chance to win at the high point, and they were running really, really good offense. So I think if we started to see a team that was kept it close and then started to struggle, and it's like what we're kind of seeing with Green Bay. They're not scoring a ton of points, and then in the second half, they're going completely cold. I think they've only scored one touchdown in second halves this season. It's a little bit different because the Eagles have looked so good in the first half. They have weapons everywhere. Their quarterback's playing at an MVP level. They're giving themselves so much cushion. Now, against better teams, yes, this is going to have to change completely because better teams are going to be able to come back on the Eagles. This defense isn't going to be that good where they're going to hold down Kansas City, where they're going to hold down Buffalo. Like, I know they don't play those teams in the regular season, but I mean, you may see those teams in the Super Bowl. You're going to see the Rams in the playoffs maybe. You're going to see, Tampa Bay fully healthy in the playoffs this season. So, like, that's where you're going to need the second half to be more buttoned up, more efficient, more effective. But honestly, right now, I think that's just a little nit to pick for Philly fans and for writers. But I think that, and they've mentioned that so far. Every single week after the game, Jalen Hurts has mentioned, yeah, we played great, but like, he didn't even say that too. He's like, yeah, we played good, but we still have so much to work on. We still have a next level to reach. And the fact that they're coming out right after the games and saying that they are prompted by the fact that, you're not really scoring in the second half. But they almost asked, like, what would you think about the offense performance? And they're like, yeah, it's good, but the second half we need to be a lot better. And the fact that they're recognizing that is big because then they're focusing on it throughout the season. And one big thing I'll kind of conclude the mailbag here with is in the second half, it comes down so much to off-script plays. It comes down so much to you call a play, you go through your first read, second read, it breaks down, and then your quarterback scrambles. Your quarterback rolls out, makes a play. And that's where I think they're going to be fine because Jalen Hurts can roll out, his legs can get him anywhere on the field, and then he has the chemistry with A.J. Brown and Devontae Adams where they know what he's thinking. When he rolls out right, break off the route, come back to the sideline, come back to the quarterback. He rolls out left, break down the route, follow your quarterback, give him an outlet to throw the ball. And he's also smart enough not to force into those things. Well, okay, I'll throw it away. I'm not going to risk a turnover there. He's gotten so smart with that. But I think the connection with the wide receivers and the fact that he's so mobile is going to fix those problems in the second half. So I don't think it's a huge worry right now. I think that the fact that they've been so dominant in the first half has led to that. And I hope they continue to be as dominant in the first half because it's going to continue to give guys reps in the second half with big leads. And then it's hopefully going to give some guys some opportunity to rest in the second half. We got a lot of guys dealing with just little injuries here and there. So a couple extra series off would do well for some guys. So overall, no, I'm not worried about the Eagles' second halves. All right, we're going to switch now to our second half of the show. We're going to talk some MLB now, and specifically the playoff races. Only a couple series left for a lot of the big teams. A lot of the divisions have been wrapped up, especially in the American League, where Houston has clinched their division. The Yankees pretty much have their division wrapped up. They have their division, they have a playoff berth clinched. They're 7.5 games ahead of Toronto, so they're going to clinch within the next couple days. Cleveland's already clinched the AL Central, and Houston's already clinched the AL West. So the American League is a lot more cut and dry. And then the wild card is a little bit more cut and dry in the American League as well, with Toronto, Tampa Bay, and Seattle all holding positions right now. And then Baltimore's 3.5 games back. So they are still within, they're not eliminated quite yet. They're still within their range of possibilities here, but it does look like Toronto, Tampa Bay, and Seattle are going to represent the American League wildcard positions. But the real intrigue comes down to the National League. And when you look at the divisions in the National League, I'm going to pull up the exact divisions now. Only one team has clinched their division, and that's the Los Angeles Dodgers. We still have the NL Central up for grabs, although St. Louis is probably going to clinch it. They're 6.5 up on Milwaukee right now, so they'll probably clinch the NL Central soon. And then the NL East really comes down to the New York Mets and the Atlanta Braves. This is fascinating because Atlanta is 12 games up on the wild card right now, and they're only 1 game back of the Mets. So that could really swing the playoff bracket. If the Mets have been in the lead for the NL East for most of the year, them and the Braves have gone back and forth over the last couple weeks because the Braves have been an absolute unit of late. They have been phenomenal. Their pitching has been great. Their hitting has been great. And they're really coming on at the right time. And the Mets have kind of faded slightly, but now they're starting to pick it up back up. I still think the Mets win the division and the Braves finished as the wild card. So that brings our intrigue to the final 2 wild card slots in the National League. And our Philadelphia Phillies are right in the thick of it. At least they are in the playoffs as of right now. As of right now, San Diego is in the 2nd wild card spot. The Philadelphia Phillies are in the 3rd. And then the Milwaukee Brewers are on the outside looking in. But they're only a game and a half back of the Phillies. So this is where it gets really fun. The San Diego Padres, they have 3 series left. They have 3 against the Dodgers starting tonight, and then they have 3 against the White Sox, and then to finish the year, they have 3 against the Giants. All 3 of those series are going to be at home. Granted, they probably have the toughest schedule down the stretch out of these 3 teams, but they're all home. Their pitchers are doing well. All their hitters are healthy and in the lineup. So we expect them to still do well. They're a game and a half up on the Phillies for the 2nd wild card spot. Now, the Phillies do hold the tiebreaker over the Padres, so if they make up a game and a half, they will jump the Padres and be in that 2nd wild card slot. For the Phillies, 3 series left, all 3 on the road. They have a 9-game road trip coming up. 3 against the Cubs, 3 against the Nationals, and then 3 at the Astros. Now, we just talked about the Astros having already wrapped up the AL Central. By this point in the year, they will more than likely have their seed locked up, so there's not going to be a ton to play for there. So you hope, from a Phillies perspective, that there's not much to play for Houston, so you're not going to see Justin Verlander. You're probably not going to see Framber Valdez. You might not see Christian Javier. Some of their star pitchers, you might not see Yordan Alvarez in the lineup. You might not see Kyle Tucker in the lineup. Maybe Alex Bregman, Jose Altuve. You might not see some of these guys in the lineup all 3 games. So it might present an opportunity to beat a playoff team in a series to hold on to that wild card spot. But I did mention all 3 of those series on the road for the Padres, all 3 of their series at home. And then we talk about the Brewers trying to get into the playoffs here. They have the next 3 series all at home. So they have the Cardinals for 2 games. This is pretty much going to decide the division. If the Cardinals win either of these games, I think they pretty much wrap up the division. But they have 2 games against the Cardinals, and then they have a 4-game set against the Miami Marlins at home, and then 3 against the Arizona Diamondbacks at home. So you're talking about 2 teams, last place in their division. I'm not sure if the Diamondbacks are there. No, the Diamondbacks are a little bit better. But Marlins, I guess Marlins aren't even last in their division either. But 2 teams well below 500, and then you have a team in the Cardinals, only 2 games against them there. But like I mentioned, all at home. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see. Now, how I see this shaking out, the Phillies have the wild card tiebreaker over both of these teams, the Brewers and the Padres. So I think the Phillies are in the driver's seat, which is terrifying as a Phillies fan. I do not want, the demons of the September collapses have been so prevalent over these last couple weeks, and it's just been so bad. Now, they did play better against the Braves and the Blue Jays this last week. They had 2 games against the Blue Jays and then 4 against the Braves. They really should have beat the Braves in that 3-game series, but they dropped Saturday and Sunday games. The Blue Jays, they could have won they lost 1 in extra innings, so they could have won that game as well, so they split with them. Overall, not bad. 2 teams are going to be playoff teams. You split 3-3 with them. If it was a 3-game series against the Braves, they won the first 2 games of the series, they win the series. So I'm cautiously optimistic right now. The Phils have a little bit tougher, the Phils have a little bit of an easier schedule than most of these other teams. The Cubs are not good. They're playing a lot of young guys. The Nationals, we've already seen, are one of the worst teams in the bigs. So that should be hopefully a nice 3-game set. That's also close to Philadelphia, so they should have some fans there. And then to finish it off in Houston, this was a series that got rescheduled from earlier in the year. It's going to be really interesting, man. I'm like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic. The pitching between Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler for the Phillies has started to turn on. Bryce Harper has been ice cold, but hopefully he's put some better at bats together over the last couple games. So you're hoping he starts to heat up. Kyle Schwarber's up to 42 home runs, so you hope he keeps getting going. We expect to have Nicholas Castellanos activated for this first game against Chicago, if not the second game. So you get another big bat back in the lineup. And, it really is just going to come down to these last couple games. And I think the biggest thing for Phillies fans to just kind of understand is, we've been waiting to be back in this situation. I'm praying that they get back into the playoffs, even if they get ousted in the first round, just breaking the streak of, 12 years now of not making the playoffs. Going into next year with that confidence, we're a playoff team, I think is going to be huge. I still think they can make some noise in the playoffs this year. Do I think they can beat the Dodgers or the Mets in a 7-game series? No. But then again, crazier things have happened in the sport of baseball. So I think it's going to be very, very fun to watch. Phil's lead off their series with the Cubs today. The Padres lead off their series with the Dodgers today. And then the Brewers lead off their series with the Cardinals today. So definitely stay tuned for that. But we will be tracking that. I know we haven't really been talking much baseball over the last couple weeks, but especially getting into the playoffs and as this race heats up, we are definitely going to be talking some more baseball on the show. All right, everyone, that is going to wrap it up for the show. Once again, please check that description below for all our social media handles. Feel free to shoot us any questions. Please do on social media, whether it be on Twitter, Instagram, in the comments section below on YouTube. Feel free to send us questions. We will answer them on the show. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in, and we can't wait to see you back here again next time.